Hello and welcome to this tutorial. So this is something slightly different to what we've done before. What I've got here is, let me start from the beginning. So this is my normal modeling tab here, so I'm just going to open this up a little bit. Nope, not that way. That way. And I'm going to make this into a timeline so I can do some animation. But the animation we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to do some physics simulations, and in particular we're going to do some cloth. So I'm going to look at the body of the character here. Now we've done a good bit of work with the face and the head, but not a huge amount. There's still more to be done, but we've done very little with this, with the body. Now I could go doing all sorts of things with this, but normally we'd get out a pen and paper and we'd have a good design of what is needed before we start modeling. Also, what we might do is we might make some additional elements like a coat or a cloak or a scarf, and then we would put them on, because there's obviously no point in me modeling underneath them because it won't be seen. So in this tutorial here we're just going to do some cloth simulation to see what we can come up with. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the body and use this as sort of like my my mannequin that I'm going to drape the cloth over. So I'm just going to tell Blender that this object has collision. Now I'm not going to worry too much about how much friction there is or how thickness the outer layer is, etc. Just saying it has friction. I'm going to leave the default settings. And then just to illustrate how this works, I'm going to start by adding a plane. So here's my plane. I'm just going to move it that way. And I'm going to go to edit mode, and we'll scale it on Y, and we'll scale it on X. And yeah, and then we'll move it over a little bit. Now I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I'm going to press W and subdivide, and then open up my little subdivision tab here and subdivide this 10 times. Oops, 10 times. Okay, so now I've got lots more geometry, and you need quite a bit of geometry to do this. Not too much, or it'll become quite cumbersome and the computer will have a fit when it tries to simulate what you're doing. But I'm going to drop this as a piece of cloth on top of this arm and see if we can simulate that. So all I need to do is tell Blender that this is a piece of cloth. Now we'll worry about these settings in a little bit, and then I can press play. And it's going to try and simulate the cloth. Now you can see that it takes quite a while for it to drop, and I'm only working on 100 frames. Now the reason I'm only working on 100 frames is I've set my end frame to 100, and also here I should set my bake settings. I should set this end frame here to 100. Okay, so that means I should probably have my starting point, so let's go back to the start, a bit closer to the arm. So I'm making sure I'm on the first frame before I do this. So now I'll press play and run the simulation again. Okay. And I can pause it at any point to have a look at my simulation. Now it's still very, we can see all these different faces. So let's go Object, Shade Smooth. And also I'm going to go to my modifier stack and add a subdivision surface modifier to make it a bit smoother, a bit more organic looking. Now, just to be aware, there's an order to these modifiers. You shouldn't add the subdivision surface modifier first. If you do, all the extra geometry that comes with it will have to be calculated into the simulation. And while that may give you more accurate results, it'll also take a good deal longer to simulate. So just be aware that the order of this, these are important. So, so that's my simulation, and if there was anything in that I liked, I could keep it. And how do I keep it? Well, let's say I liked what I have here. This is just sort of as a demonstration. Now I know there's some intersection here, but we won't worry about that too much. So if I wanted to keep this as a mesh, what I can simply do is go down here and tell it to bake it. And what baking will do is it'll simply put all of this information here frame by frame into the mesh. So I can say bake all, so it's going to bake my simulation, and now when I go forward, all that information is in the correct place. And then if I want to keep it on this frame here, so this is the look that I want, I go back to my modifier stack and I just literally apply cloth. And now when I slide up and down here, it doesn't move, because that is how this mesh now looks. If I go into edit mode, this is how it looks in edit mode, as if I had modeled it in that position. So let's delete that and start again. And we'll try and make something a little more interesting in terms of clothing. So I'm going to make a circle, and I'm going to scale it up a little bit and go GZ and move it down to about here. Now I'll scale it in on X and then scale it on Y a little bit, and I'm going to look from the front. I'm going to add a mirror modifier, go into edit mode, and I am going to delete 1/2 of this so I can model it just from the other side. Now I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, those 4 there, and I'm going to extrude. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to turn on clipping. So I'm going to extrude on Y, and then over here I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and extrude on Y, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and extrude on X. Extrude on X again, and extrude on X again. And then to make these kind of all line up, I'm going to go S, Y, 0, and the same here, S, Y, 0, and then GY, bring this back here, GY, bring that back there. Now keep in mind that we need a good bit of geometry. Just going to extrude this out a little bit. Now this is going to be like sort of a poncho. Now I could go into more detail and add sleeves and make it a bit more complicated like we did in the other example. But I'm trying to keep this simple enough. So I will take this and go GZ and lower it down a little bit. Oops, do the same with these two. And we'll set it to be smooth. And we'll leave that. I'm just going to be kind of crude enough. So I'm going to go to my simulation now, or simulation settings. And I'm going to click turn this into cloth. And you can see that it's automatically jumped. So I was going to cancel that out and try and explain that why that happened. So I need to go back to frame 1 and then click cloth. And then down here I had baked earlier, so I'm going to say free all bakes, and that'll basically clear the cache of anything that's been done. And now when I press play, it will run the simulation. So this is a much easier way to get something to sort of fall and bend around your character than would normally be. So now there's all sorts of settings that we can play with here. Let's have a look at some of these. So we've got dampening. So this is sort of slowing down the movement of the cloth. So we'll reduce the dampening a good bit, and we'll run the simulation again and see what we get. So that should give us more movement. Okay, so it's a simple way of adding or of creating. So I'm going to apply my mirror modifier, and then I'm going to add a subsurface modifier to that, and then we can, as before, decide at what point, what frame we like this on. Now there are more advanced features that we can play with, so we can we can do pinning, which is to, select a part of the model and go, don't move this bit, and how stiff that would be. We can have self collision, so if this was sort of passing through itself, or if we were animating it, we can do that. And we can also animate it, which is always good fun. So I can make a group of vertices in edit mode, and then assign them to a bone, and then animate the bone, and the object will move, and the simulation will follow that movement. So we can do quite a lot. I'll have quite a few options, and you can see here I can increase the quality of the physics. That'll just take the simulation longer to work out. Okay, so so let's try one more. And let's say that that's the one we want. And we're going to go to our modifier stack, and we are going to apply. And now we have a cloak that is spread out over our character that hopefully adheres a little bit to the character's geometry. So that's all we're going to do in this tutorial. So this is, well, not that long, 10 minutes, but hopefully it'll give you some ideas as to maybe some of the things that you could do, like sashes or scarves, or coats, for example, that you could place on your characters, and use this technique to sort of put them in place. And then once you've done that, to apply the cloth modifier, so then that becomes a static part of your mesh, which we can go in and tidy up now. I can go and turn on my proportional editing and move this like I would had I just modeled it by hand. So it's a good way to get a starting point for trying to model some cloth or some clothes. And I will stop now before I start doing too much. Okay, so we'll leave it there for now.